dying in prison or dying in the poorhouse. There's not much choice between them.
She became the most cold-blooded killer to lead a gang in modern times. Buying her brood more murder time with blood money. Recognizing their weaknesses. Drawing to her the worst of the underworld. Sadistic tormentors like Al Carpus. The underworld made her queen, a woman capable of anything.
You asked interrogative questions around my suit. It's gone.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now, Elrick?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elrick coming to you with our annual Up North episode, which I think we now can safely say should be called The Mistake by the Lake. But if you caught our intro and you're a fan of obscure black and white movies, that's all about Ma Barker. But this week we're talking about an equally diabolical and heinous matriarch who made her name back in 1987 with an infamous standoff at the Bungalow Motel in Inkster, where 3 police officers were killed. Now, that's terrible and tragic all by itself, but the way this story unspooled is unlike almost none other you've heard. And we're going to be joined with Michigan Journalism Hall of Famer Joe Swickard, formerly of the Detroit Free Press, also a member of the Detroit Free Press award-winning, Pulitzer award-winning Kwame Kilpatrick text message team, who's going to talk to us about his coverage of that case, which included, and this used to happen, folks, a jailhouse interview with people before they went on trial. It's an extraordinary episode and an extraordinary story, and we're going to get to Joe in just a minute. But first, I want to thank our sponsors. As always, Luke Nowacki. If you need a plan, and believe me, you do need a plan, ideally better than the plan I've come up with for this week's show. But you call Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. Will help you make a plan for your future. Also, we're brought to you by the Caju Cafe. There's always a great time and great music and great food on the East Side. The summer music lineup has been set. And if you have not caught it, go to cajucafe.com, catch some live music outside in the beer garden. We're also brought to you by DCFC. If you use promo code SOUL, SOUL at debtcityfc.com, not SeatGeek, you have to go to debtcityfc.com and use promo code SOUL. You'll get 15% off tickets for upcoming DCFC matches at Keyworth in Hamtramck. And then we're also brought to you by Artisan Interiors. If you have some space in your house that needs a little sprucing up, maybe you've got a wasted room that could become the centerpiece of your home, give John at Artisan Interiors a call. We have links to all their websites on our website, which is mlsouldetroit.com. There you'll also find a link for our merchandise. The sale is supposed to end on June 30th. We're going to extend it by a week. So act fast, get your new swag. We got some new offerings, particularly for the women, and a new vest for those of you who like to be sartorial. Mark doesn't like them, but he also thought this show would be a good idea. So we don't trust him anymore.
You sound like you're at the bottom of Burt Lake. That's all I know.
Well, I almost was yesterday. We had amazing storms that came through here, and they opened a massive sinkhole on Burt Lake Road, which I don't know if this is the end of days or not, but we're going to make the most of this last hour together.
Sounds good. Maybe get fiber optics next time you're up there.
Yeah, let me know when you're ready to write that check. I think we need to get Starlink.
It's not cheap. It's funny. I was just up in that area. I was in the Lewiston area, but we went all over up north up there, and it's crazy when you look at all the poles. It's all fiber. I mean, there's so much fiber optic up there. I don't know. Maybe it hasn't gotten to Burt Lake yet.
Speaking like a tech guy, I just see lines.
Okay.
I don't discriminate like you do. They're just all lines to me.
Okay.
They're all equal.
And
they're all beautiful.
I don't go anywhere without good internet.
Well, then my options are very limited. If you mistake this man for one of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, it's just because you recognize him and his byline, because he's written about more catastrophe, more diabolical deeds and evildoers than just about anybody in Detroit journalism history. And that's, of course, my friend and esteemed retired colleague, Joe Swickard, who had the, I don't know if I want to say it's the pleasure, because I think you're always exhilarated when you say, oh my God, these horrible people are going to talk to me. But then you're like, oh, it means I have to talk to these horrible people. But Joe, you talked to the Lemons brothers, the sons of Alberta Easter, who were, well, I don't know, how do we say this? They basically killed a bunch of cops over a bad check.
Yeah. And by the way, the 1920s film Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse, one of the stars is Joseph Swickard. So there
Really?
you go. Really? Not kidding. God. Yeah. Okay. Well,
I do want to say the Bungalow it's also known as in the Inkster hotel shoot. I mean, I think I was 11 when it happened, and I remember it. That was like the first big news story that really freaked me out. But I think that year you had the Flight 255 crashed, and you had that one. So I'm like 11 years old, and all this bad news. I'm like, oh, I'm going to become a total news junkie now.
Yeah, it was a bad news buffet.
Yes.
We all got fed on that. But it was a horrible situation out at the motel. The 3 officers died tragically. And what unfolded was just beyond belief with Alberta Easter, the mom, and her 3 sons. There was Roy, William, and George. And I don't know how to describe Mom other than she was nuts. I mean, she was unhinged, and it was kind of like her sons shared her disordered view of reality. She was a con woman. She was massively in debt, and she would parlay photos with famous people into being able to leverage loans for meeting other folks. She would write thank you notes and get letters back, and she would flash these and carry on. The incident in question was she wrote a bad check for a limo, and she was going to be evicted from the Bungalow Motel, which was one of these kind of, I don't want to say hot pillow places along the highway there, but there were a number of small time motels, and they were going to be evicted that day. And she was going to be pinched for a bad check. And 2 officers showed up to serve the warrant for the bad check. And she did not want to go. And she could talk a mile a minute. She could talk the bark off a tree. And finally she said, this is, you've got an arrest warrant, but this is a civil matter, and just went on and on and on. And finally they called for their sergeant, and he showed up. And Roy, one of the sons, told me in a jailhouse interview that when Sergeant Ira Parker walked in, it was though the devil entered the room, and gunplay and tragedy ensued. I should give a little background. I was covering what was then Recorder's Court, the criminal court for Detroit. And I got to know a number of the attorneys very well. And one of them was Robert Mitchell, a legendary figure there called the Chief. And anybody who had been in the court knew him by his gravelly voice and drawl. And I had called him asking about his client. And he asked me if I wanted to interview him. And he said his point was that Roy was crazy, not maybe insane for an insanity defense, but a guy who was not really playing on all cylinders. So he took me into the old jail, and we went to the attorney interview room. And if you've seen the prison movies, there's the room and the little thing in between, as they said, it's like a ping pong table. That isn't how it worked at the old jail. It was a steel box in the jail. It was summer. It was hotter than hell. If there was air conditioning, it was locked up somewhere else. And the 3 of us are squeezed into this small room, and Roy starts spooling this story. And it's an astonishing story, and he talks of the devil walking into the room, divine intervention, how bullets miraculously miss him, how his pants are frizzled into threads during this shootout. And what triggered the shooting was that the sergeant said, "I'm tired of this BS." And he reached out to put his hands on Alberta, and "You don't touch Mom." And Roy went for his gun. And he said they didn't know he had a gun because it was under his white sport coat. And he came out shooting. And 3 officers were killed pretty quickly. That was unknown at the time. He also looks out the door, and this is the kind of place it is. The desk clerk comes out with his own gun and starts firing at the room. You know, it's what you would expect. You know, we keep the light on for you. And we also have the laser aim. And I shouldn't be laughing, but it was so bizarre. And then Roy goes for a 223, which, you know, an AR-15, and opens fire on the clerk. The motel is surrounded by officers, and they're shooting back and forth, and the officers on the outside have no idea what's going on inside other than there's a lot of shooting. In fact, if I recall correctly, there was so much shooting that the officers ran out of ammo, and they essentially had to break into a sporting goods store, gun shop nearby, to get more firepower. Meanwhile, Alberta, who talks a mile a minute, wants to talk to Mayor Coleman Young, or failing that, Bill Bonds, or other people. You know, she's naming all these celebrities she wants to talk to surrender. Eventually, she does surrender, and she has led the authorities believe the officers are alive. And when they finally get in the 2 rooms, they find the officers dead in the bathroom, and they have been dead throughout this entire shootout. And
yeah, there was a standoff, right, for
God, went
a
on
long
for
time
hour.
because they thought the officers were still alive and held hostage.
Yeah, they thought they were alive, and meanwhile, if I recall correctly, there was a huge thunderstorm. So it had this almost supernatural or preternatural event going on, you know, thunder and lightning and rain and gunfire, and, you know, are the officers alive or dead? And it turns out they're dead, and Mom and the boys are arrested, and it is a major story, and nationwide. And one of our photographers, I believe it was William Archie, but it may have been Richard Lee, at the arraignment, Alberta comes out, and and she holds up her hands, shackled, and waves them to the camera. And either Richard Lee or William Archie snaps that photo. And here is this woman, African-American woman, holding up her hands in chains. And it is a dramatic shot, and it sets off all kinds of flurry all around the country. Is she being treated right? What's going on here? It was astonishing. It was, but Alberta would call people. She would call reporters and talk that the head of Motown is going to help her, and she's going to get in touch with President Bush because she's got these letters, and she'd just go on and on and on. Well, I wanted to cover the trial. I covered the preliminary exam where they're bound over to face trial. But then her defense attorney, one of the defense attorneys, Henry Shard, says that I can't testify. I can't cover the court because I am a witness. I've taken somebody's statement. And I'm saying, well, you know, witnesses are excluded because their testimony might be influenced by what they hear in court. And I'm thinking, I know what happened, and I already sat through the preliminary exam. I'm not going to hear something that's going to change my testimony. Anyway, Richard Hathaway, the judge, agreed, and I was excluded and could not testify. But it was an all-star case. It had Doug Baker as the prosecutor. Doug went on to prosecute many other cases, including the two officers in the fatal beating.
Budson and Nevers in the
Budson
Malice
and
Creek
Nevers.
meeting.
Although he rose to national stature on that trial, Doug Baker was actually the lead attorney on that. And on the defense, you had Juan Mateo, you had Gerald Evelyn, you had Jim Howard. You had an all-star group, the best attorneys available to handle the case. And the thinking was that they want good attorneys because they don't want mistakes during the trial. These are all assigned attorneys from the court that'll screw it up and send it back on appeal. Like, once is enough. We don't want to go through this twice.
And this case was extraordinary. If Sean was here, he'd say, get the bell ready. Juan Mateo worked with Gerald Evelyn for years, and Gerald Evelyn was Bobby Ferguson's attorney in the Kilpatrick prosecutions, because these guys were very young and very early in their careers, but developed into, legal lions in Detroit. But one of the extraordinary things about this Alberta Easter is she was the kind of person, as Joe has said, could talk a canary out of a bird's mouth, who would go to these motels. And I'd never heard that term, hot pillow motels. I've always heard no-tell motel, but I love hot pillows. And I think you get the image, right, folks, that these are rented maybe by the hour, or maybe when you park there, you back in so that your significant other can't read your license plate. But she would stay at these places, run up a tab, and then bunk off to the next place. And so she was always one step ahead of the spider. And I wrote about this week because there will be a candlelight vigil on Thursday night at 2 p.m. At 8 p.m. Thursday, 8 p.m. July 2nd, a candlelight vigil at Inkster. If you'd like to honor both the officers who were killed in the Bungalow Motel incident, that would be Ira Parker, Daniel Dubiel, and Clay Hoover, and also an officer named Kenneth Woodmore, who was killed several years later while questioning a suspect who was on a bike. And even though he's on a bike, he was still very well armed. It's a real problem around here. But Easter, after I wrote about this, I started hearing from people saying, she tried to take over a recording studio in Detroit, Gold Soul. And later on in the show, we'll play you a song that George Lemons recorded. And you can judge for yourself whether or not there was really any gold in that soul. But she was an extraordinary character. And I think thought, as some people do, that they can use the media to talk themselves out of what in other states might be a trip to the electric chair. Joe, what did you find when you spoke to these people? You were told they were crazy, but was there anything about them that you found compelling, or any part of their story that had even a hint of a ring of truth?
That they loved their mom and they would do anything for her. There's a term, folle à deux, where a couple will share a fantasy, a bit of unreality that maybe the FBI is watching, or, things like that, conspiracy theories. It was though this family was so in her thrall that whatever she said, they went along with. That, she was in contact with the President of the United States. She was going to run Motown. They were going to create their own labels. She rented limousines and would show up. She would get into parades, a small town parade where a candidate might be appearing, and she'd manage to get her photo taken with them, and she'd leverage that for more credit and other things. It was kind of like John Wayne Gacy getting photographed with Hillary Clinton. He was at a fundraiser, and, there's the big line, and everybody shakes hands, and everybody gets a snapshot. But she would use these to claim a close relationship. She would, in my interview with Roy, Susan Ager, colleague, tremendous writer, fantastic reporter, spoke with Alberta And we kind of blended the stories as they told them, and they kind of matched and didn't. But Alberta, once she had your phone number, you were cooked. I mean, the phone would ring. She would call from prison and go on about her heels if she was in touch with the president or, Henry Kissinger, and it was up. And you could not interrupt her. And you would stop taking her calls after a while. And then she would talk other prisoners into calling, and she would take the phone. And she would have these other prisoners convinced that the free press would get behind their stories, that they were wrongly incarcerated, the gates would swing open, if only we would listen to what she said. And this went on for weeks and months. And she'd call me, and she'd call Jack Kresnak, who sat nearby, and was like, "Oh, Alberta, no. And you could just put the phone down. You could go brew a cup of coffee, come back, and whatever. And she was still trying to talk her way out of the joint.
It's like talking to Elrick.
Hey, say,
he needs to work on his charisma a little bit. I haven't seen his picture with so many politicians and riding in parades.
Yeah.
The difference between my kids and her kids is my kids can actually sing. But she had in reading the coverage, and Susan Ager, also as Joe, a wonderful writer and a good reporter. I thought one of the columns that really resonated with me was from another Free Press legend, Susan Watson, who early on wrote a column that said, "Mothers, send your kids out into the world and let them live their lives instead of ensnaring them in this fantasy that you've created." And from reading this superlative coverage, Alberta Easter had a grandiosity where when things went wrong, it wasn't that they went wrong, it's that the FBI was out to get her. And of course, race was always an issue where this wouldn't have happened to a white person. They're trying to do this to me for this or for that. She played every note on the 88 key board of excuses. And at some point, it just went too far. And as I recall from reading these great stories, somehow the boys had disarmed the police officer before their supervisor got there, and may have even been shot with their own guns. And in the end, Alberta and her sons tried to claim that the officers shot each other, which was one of many theories of the case that didn't wash with the jury.
If this story doesn't work, I'll change. Oh, they committed suicide. No, it was a shootout. It was whatever came to mind. Do you like this deal? How about this? One of the crazy things about this, many things, sad, tragic, I found, started asking, okay, they're going to pick her up on a bad check charge. What would have happened to her? At most, nothing. They would have spent a night in jail until they went before the district judge, who would have cut them loose. And they would have spent a couple of hours behind bars, had a bologna sandwich for breakfast, and been back out on the street to start the whole cycle again. But instead, the officers made the mistake of actually trying to arrest her. Now, the order of the deaths, we'll never know, because, as Roy said, things went black, and the hand of God was on us to save me as the bullet whizzed by my head, but it frazzled my pants. That makes as much sense of any of the stories that they told, but it was never their fault. And there was always one more person to blame, or one more, you were talking about that keyboard. She found unknown chords that she could parlay into it. And there was always somebody willing to believe her just enough.
Do you think she was orchestrating him to just ambush the police? Do you think it was her orders?
No. I think the situation got out of hand. She had always talked her way out of everything. But here she is at the end of the rope. There's no knot to tie on, hang on to. And she's just about got, as I understand it, would be a good situation. She is pretty well convinced the individual officers don't act, get a supervisor here. He'll see that this is all wrong. This is a bad warrant, and it'll be okay. He comes in and he's tired of her. I mean, he listens about 1 minute and he says, enough of the BS, and reaches for her.
Oh.
And that's too much. And the guns come out. Or the first responding officers could have tried to make an arrest. It is so stupid that the tragic stupidity cost 3 lives. Just the fatal fantasy ending up with these officers, and it's just terrible, tragic, needless.
Joe, one of the things that the family's accounts seem to agree on is that the first 2 officers who came in, one of whom who was still basically a probationary officer, that they were gentlemen, that they were professional, and they treated them with courtesy. What we don't know is how they disarmed them and somehow got power over them. But in the stories I read, and of course, I'm reading these stories in chronological order as they happen, and it's amazing how many just incredible journalists the Free Press had out there, and I'm sure the news did too, how many angles were covered, how many different stories were unearthed, witness accounts. I mean, people who were driving by had their cars hit by flying bullets. It was such hellfire. In fact, I got an email from a woman after this story appeared in the Free Press this weekend who said, I was in the room, one of the rooms next door. I was scared for my life. I hid under a bed for hours. But one of the accounts I read was that the security guard at this hotel, a guy named Garland Booker, I believe, encountered the supervisor when he came up and said, hey, those guys in there are kind of well armed. And he said that the sergeant, Ira Parker, patted his gun and said, well, I'm well armed too when he went in there. That account seems to not have varied over time, but boy, and I think I read one of our stories where this security guard said, I feel like if anybody had listened to me, this all could have been avoided. But it does feel like a family, almost like a David Koresh situation where they've run so many scams and someone's finally said the end of it and they've decided, well, this is going to be our last stand.
Yeah. They were very well. They had pistols. I mean, Roy, he's got a gun hidden under his sport coat. He's got access immediately to AR-15. And by the way, one of the things seized at the motel was the American Rifleman magazine, which is the NRA magazine. And at that time, one of the membership benefits was you could buy surplus ammunition at low discount prices. And apparently they had taken advantage of this to arm themselves and to stock up on bullets. So, if the record doesn't make it, we've got another avenue. If the lives were not taken, it had been so bizarre. If you had watched, Larry David, orchestrating something, but people wound up dead. And that is the real tragedy of it. And I don't think it could have been headed off because these guys were armed and they weren't going to let mom be arrested for a bum check.
Sure. And
you bound. Who figures you're going to die for a bounced check?
Yeah. And the things these officers couldn't have known is that they had just left another, let's just say, budget motel in, I believe, Dearborn, where they had run up a massive tab and had just gotten out just before they were kicked out. They had a massive tab at the Bungalow Motel, and it could be one of these things where they're like, well, we have no place else to go. We've played the string out and something needs to happen. And unfortunately what it was cataclysmic.
Yeah. But as you say, they were out of options. They were going to be evicted. One of the sons, I think it was George, correct me if I'm wrong, I can't recall, had terrible kidney problems. He was sick in bed all the time and had just been to medical treatment that day and was incapacitated. Now, what part he played in the gunfire, I don't know. He was certainly convicted. and as they all were. But it was bizarre, the whole thing. And trying to tell people later that, oh, well, you got this family and they're going to get evicted. And they decide instead to have a shootout with Inkster, Wayne County. Even the FBI was in on it. I mean, and standing them off for hours. Unbelievable.
What were their sentences in the end? Like when they were found guilty?
As they say in then recorders, they were gone all day. They got natural life, no parole. But Mike, ML, you said that one of them, his whereabouts is unknown.
Yeah, so let me clear that up. I can go into this kind of detail on the podcast. Michigan has something called the Offender Tracking Information System, where you can look up prison inmates, and if they're still serving time, or they're within 3 years of being the responsibility of the corrections department, which means they may be free in a halfway house on parole. It says that he was discharged in 2024. Now, I talked to a former parole board member. And my understanding is discharge means he served the full day that Joe was referring to, that he's dead. But I did reach out to Michigan Department of Corrections over the weekend. Fairness to them, they're not working over the weekend, so they didn't get back to me. But I still have not heard back from them to clear up what his disposition is. My belief is he's dead. There's only one of the Lemons brothers who's still with us. That is Roy Lemons, I believe. And he's 81. He probably is not going to make it. But George is right. Joe is right. George did have diabetes and was hospitalized. And I believe he was tried, or his preliminary examination, which is the evidentiary hearing to determine whether there's enough evidence to send you to trial, was held later than the others because he was hospitalized. He's also the guy you're going to hear in room 7609. But yeah, who knows? His health may have gotten to a point where the family had a sense of desperation. The poignancy of this, we have to remember the officers and the families they left behind. These were officers who had, some people had grown children or nearly grown children. I believe one of the officers had a pregnant fiance or girlfriend. There were little children. There were children either just born or about to be born. And in one of the stories that really affected me, I read that Sergeant Parker's son, Ira Parker Jr., came by the motel that night when they thought there was still a hostage situation, and just kind of came to the scene to be as close to his father as he could, and then went home believing that this was being negotiated and that there was still hope that his dad would be released. And of course, by then he'd been dead for hours. So these stories, while they are attention grabbing and fascinating, for some of the people involved, there's no ending. It's just a tragedy that will not end until the last of their days. But for those of us watching from safety, reporters like Joe, Susan, Jack, the amazing reporters who covered this, they told a story that will not be forgotten soon. And Joe, we really appreciate you coming on. I would love to have you on for a future episode, maybe one of our bonus episodes, where you tell us some of your greatest stories, because I mean, we could do hours and hours. They're just amazing yarns.
Okay, I'd be happy to. One thing that you mentioned about families, and this is one thing I saw while covering the courts for more than a dozen years, that the scene outside the courtroom with the families, the survivors, of the victims as well as the defendants, the tragedy, the pain and anguish in the hallway is unforgettable. That you as a journalist, going in there, you're writing the stories, and you may wind up, joking with colleagues, and 10 feet away is a family who's lost a loved one or is on trial for life. And the poignancy is often lost because you're focused on the daily events, and the opportunity to step back and look at the greater tragedy, the ongoing tragedy. It echoes. This was 87, and I'm sure the pain is as if they were just getting that first phone call or invited into a room for a private conversation. And ML, it is great of you to make sure that people are aware of these memorial services, that the families and the heroism and they are not forgotten. And you deserve real thanks for that. And thanks for having me on. I'd like, it was a good experience. It's not something you enjoy, talking about these tragedies, but tip of the hat to you for your work on behalf of these slain officers.
Well, it's a pleasure to be able to tell these stories, folks. If you want to go out and honor them yourselves, Thursday, July 2nd, 8 p.m., Inkster Police Department. You'll see some memorials to the officers, but please feel free to go out there and be a part of it. I'm sure the families will appreciate it. Joe, one of the all-time legends of Detroit journalism. When you hear him talk, it's like you're reading his writing, which is a real one of the highest compliments I can pay to a writer, because it's so conversational and it's so colorful and it cuts right to it and it paints images that I'll never forget. They'll be with me for a long time. But Joe, thanks for your work and for the sensitivity that I know you and your colleagues showed at the time, and still show today.
Well, thanks for having me on.
And Mark, I think you have a few words to say about someone who will help you look after your family. Hopefully not after you're gone, but maybe while you're sitting by your own lakeside cottage somewhere. I have not saved up enough for that yet, but I think maybe Luke could get me there one day.
I was really wondering how you were going to segue out of that horrific story into sponsors, because that's always a fun thing to do. But
yeah, there's nothing better than the awkward segue from
not one bit.
Tragic futures to lucrative futures.
No problem with awkwardness in this place. We're cool with it. But yeah, let's talk about Luke Nowacki. He wants to know all about your investment and retirement goals, and see what Pinnacle Wealth Strategies, where he is, and find out what they can do for you. Some people are saying there's a continual, tell me more about that, conversational style that leaves them more satisfied than, say, I don't know, hanging out with Michael Jackson in a Super Soaker fight. But Luke wants to know what you have going on and what he can do to help you make more money. Want to take care of someone else's kid for 17 years just to get kicked to the curb when they graduate? Well, why not set up a college savings plan for that? It might even be useful for your own children. Give Luke a call or a text at 248-663-4748. That's 248-663-4748, because he will help provide sound financial advice. And
when you call Luke,
there it is.
He'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. member FINRA SIPC.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent.
Mosaic Wealth.
Inc.
Do you want to talk some soccer?
We can. I watched 2 games that were incredibly long, and then they were even longer. And then they ended with people kicking a ball at a guy standing there in a silly shirt.
I got to tell you,
an odd way to pick a champion.
Shootouts are not. A lot of people love them because it's a flip of the coin. Paraguay, who the U.S. beat, in the first game, beat Germany in a shootout, and then late last night, the Dutch lost to Morocco in another shootout. Now I got to say, shootout aside, those were fantastic games, especially Morocco. Now that was just back and forth, and Morocco scored late to push it into extra time and overtime, and Germany actually had multiple chances to win that. Yesterday was a pretty exciting day too. Brazil was down, they scored, so it's been a fun World Cup. And the reason I bring it up is, don't just sit at home or sit in your cabin and watch it all by yourself, because our sponsor, Detroit City FC, DCFC, the football club here, they're hosting the World Soccer Celebration watch parties for the USA and the Mexico FIFA World Cup matches. The USA watch party, they got one big game tomorrow, July 1st, Campus Martius Park. Gates open at 6 for the 8 o'clock kickoff. Space is limited, so you do have to RSVP to claim a free spot. Visit debtcityfc.com/watch-parties, or just check out their social channels, DCFG social channels everywhere for more information. And, just show up. It's always fun to watch these games with somebody. And while we're talking about DCFC, don't forget they got a lot of games going on. They currently sit 3rd in the Eastern Conference, undefeated at home, so why not go check them out? Their next home game will be July 18th, 7 p.m. against Indy 11, and there is a promo code for that, Elrick.
If you go to debtcityfc.com, promo code is SOUL. That will get you 15% off your tickets. That's a great savings. Remember, it's not SeatGeek. You have to go to debtcityfc.com. Take advantage of that promo code. Support the show. Save some dough. Have a great time.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
Dog writer?
Yeah, of the year, and I've got a medal on a ribbon, and they hosted me in New York.
So Joe was dog writer of the year, which we will try and explain to you in a future episode. But dog writer, is that, you weren't covering the American Kennel Club, were you?
Well, the Kennel Club was going on, and believe me when I say that the streets of New York were awash with dog urine.
Oh,
Well, they're all staying at the hotel, and they all have to be walked. It was a wash.
It sounds like a kids' hockey tournament, but just 2 legs good, 4 legs bad. But
Yes.
yeah. Next time we have you on, Joe, you're gonna have to show us your dog collar.
Hey,
your dog
just a second.
tags.
Hang on. I'll bring it. Hang on.
While Joe is fetching that, I don't have a Geek of the Week. I do want to show some solidarity with Dusty May and the president of the University of Michigan, who said there's so many problems with NIL, the transfer portal in college basketball, that it's not sustainable. So I want to come back. Okay, Joe, let's see this fine piece of hardware.
It is called the Maxwell Medallion.
Okay.
And it was actually crime related. That it was a program for incarcerated women at the time, and it's been expanded since, to take shelter dogs and train them and humanize them so that they can be adopted by families. It benefits the inmates because they have to be on their best behavior, gives them companionship. It helps a stray dog find a home, and it helps a family to have a furry friend. It works all the way around, and it started in Michigan, and it has since been adopted across the country, including federal prisons. So it was a little throwaway story that we did, an evergreen story for Christmas, did it, several weeks in advance. It ran and then ran across the country, and the program has brightened lives and improved lives. And so while it's kind of funny, in a way, it has actually done a lot of good. And there you go, the Maxwell Medallion. And I'll see you later, ML. Thanks for having me on. And I wanted to share that.
Thanks, Joe. We'll have you back. So there's your shaggy dog story for the day. Inmates and dogs. And what would George Costanza say about that? There's a conjugal visit joke in there somewhere, I think. But this is a sophisticated program, so
I think Jelaine Maxwell is one of the recipients of the program.
Ooh, well, some doggy style jokes come to mind, but I think we should probably just leave it there. My mom watches this show occasionally, so actually she doesn't watch it. She's not a soulmate. She's not one of our subscribers, so she just gets the free audio version. I'll have to. Maybe that's what I get for her first birthday is subscription to the Soul of Detroit.
Okay.
Hey, thanks, Joe.
Have some kibble. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Joe.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
So, Mark, I finally agree with the Wolverines. Maybe we should leave it at that.
What?
That NIL and the transfer portal is ruining college sports. I know.
Oh, I know. I know. All I've heard for the last bunch of years from administrators and coaches is how the sport's getting destroyed. The sport's going to fail. And they've been whining about it for decades now, and it's crazy. It's only getting bigger. And I'm so sick of hearing coaches and administrators, athletic directors who make millions and millions of dollars bitch and whine about how hard it is. You get paid a lot of money. Figure it out. Because you know who wasn't getting paid any money for a long time were the players. You're free labor. So stop whining about it.
Did figure it out, and then he got the hell out.
Sure.
But the point you're making is the same point that the Michigan beat writer for The Athletic made, which is,
really?
Yeah, the president and Dusty May can complain about this, and clearly it's a problem, and the congressional solution probably is not the best one. But he said, but at the same time these guys complain about it, they won't make any changes that don't benefit them. So if there were changes to be made that would benefit everybody, like, now we don't want to do that.
No,
so
they wanted to go back the way it was, so coaches got paid more, administrators got paid more. There were more administrators, so the players don't get anything. Don't get me wrong. I think Dusty May had a problem. I mean, we talked about it last week. The fact that the second they won the national championship, they had to go work on the portal because it opened at midnight. Yeah, I'm sure that's really annoying, and having to retain a roster every year is really annoying. But the guy also wanted to coach in the NBA, which I totally get that. I mean, who wouldn't? I mean, there's 30 jobs. Who wouldn't want to do that? So to act like, I just got to get out of here. This is terrible. Let's go to the NBA. I don't know if I necessarily buy that. I think, yeah, there's no doubt there's problems with college athletics. Nobody's going to disagree with that. But there's no interest in fixing them because everybody wants to hold on to whatever money they can hold on to. And it's stupid. But the game is getting ruined. That's just something I'm never going to go with because, the fact is more viewers than ever for football and basketball.
Watch porn. Still probably not the best thing for society. But so, Tommy, did you catch that? I said Dusty May and the president of U of M are right. Man. And your Wolverine buddy, Mark Fellhauer, just named them our Geeks of the Week.
I think Tommy's living rent-free in your mind, man. You bring him up every single week now.
I thought I saw him the other day when the power went out here. I thought he was cutting it off.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
Welcome to room 7609, where we have often played obscure songs with colorful stories behind them, but I don't think we've ever done anything quite like this before. This week's selection was identified for me by who else? Ben Blackwell, the impresario behind Cass Avenue Records and Third Man Records, who knows more about Detroit soul and obscure vinyl than anybody. And within hours of my story on the Bungalow Motel massacre posting, I got a text from Ben saying, one of those guys cut a single.
Wow.
And it's George Lemons doing Fascinating Girl on the label called Gold Soul that Alberta Easter claimed was going to make everybody rich and be the next big thing. There's a backstory on her claims about this, and I'll tell you about after this little ditty that is very, very popular among collectors, but doesn't do quite as well with critics.
And the great thing is, it really fits our theme of bad audio for the day, because it's not the greatest.
And Fascinating Girls.
Fascinating girl, that's what you are. Lovely little dreamer, we can go far. You have heard me say 1,000 times or more that I like to be with you, love, now and forevermore. You have heard me talk about the distant skies beneath the fascinating dreams. That is the way our future lies. Fascinating girl,
song by a murderer.
Yeah. I probably should apologize to George for suggesting earlier that he didn't have any pipes. He doesn't sound bad. That sounds like
song wasn't bad.
It sounds like a recording from the 40s. I mean, that shit is,
Well, I don't think it's widely available is the problem, but it didn't sound like a bad song.
No, and the B-side is an instrumental by the Lemon Brothers Orchestra, which I assume is Roy and William and who knows who. But this was recorded 20 years before the Bungalow Motel Massacre. So you can tell that these dreams of success had been laboring, maybe festering for 20 years. But Ben also connected me to this great thread where people discuss local recording and people they know in the music business in Detroit. And there's this great thread, no one's really updated in about 20 years, where some people who played at this studio that Alberta Easter tried to take over were recalling how it fell apart. And some had recordings or equipment that were stuck there. But apparently she had convinced some investors to help her buy this. And she wasn't able to complete the sale for whatever reason. But then a bunch of the equipment in the recording studio, and I don't know a lot about recording, but I will tell you, I think one of the biggest and most important things in a recording studio is the recording equipment. I think that we're going to probably agree on that, even among us amateurs, that a lot of that stuff went missing.
Oh, it's crazy. I never would have guessed.
Yeah, when it turned out the sale wasn't going to go through, she kind of did the late night clear out.
Yeah.
And some of that stuff may have been kept at one of the motels they were staying at before they got to the bungalow. So, but it's one of those things where these stories they go so far and they go so deep and they touch so many people, and we all have near brushes with greatness, but also near brushes with complete and utter evil. And I think she was that.
Mm. Yeah, well, so I think Joe put it the best where he said that, it would have just been one night in jail. And now you have multiple lives affected, 3 dead. So, yeah, fun stuff.
Well, I think you have a police officer who says enough of this foolishness, fairly enough. I mean, a perfectly reasonable response, and a family that may be like, you know what, we're at the end of our rope. We're just going to, this is it. This is as far as we're gonna go, and it's just terrible. But it's great to have Joe on. I do want to do a future episode where we have Joe tell some of his greatest tales. I think that'd be a lot of fun. But we'd love to hear your stories and your songs for Room 769. We started a little theme. We've gotten some great suggestions. I'm going to get to them right when we're back in Detroit. I'm sorry, when I'm remote like this, it's hard to do everything with the level of sophistication to which you've become accustomed as longtime listeners. But we'll get back to that. We'll also get back to your feedback. I can't really get to that today because I only have the phone and I can't multitask very well. But we do want to thank our newest soulmate, I think maybe a recurring soulmate, a repeat soulmate, DJ Weiser, who has signed up to support the show.
Thank you.
At a very generous level. So we appreciate that. And hopefully today's episode is precisely why folks want to keep this show coming back week after week. Sponsors come and go, but we hope our soulmates join us and stay with us till the bitter end. And we hope that end is not Mark and I in the basement at Drew's house with the Ferndale police coming by to say, hey, that Jim Bentley guy, send him out. He's got to answer for some things. But if you are a soulmate, you know that you get to watch the show. You get to see Joe's dog award. You get the show before everybody else. You get our new bonus episode posting soon. And of course, you get access to our VIP events. We are planning tentatively to do something in August at the Caju Cafe, possibly with the Smiths United. So mark your calendar for that. But we love a chance to get together with all of you. Everybody's welcome, but the soulmates will have a VIP experience. Last time we did some feather bowling and they got some exclusive swag. I imagine we'll do something like that again. Maybe Soulmates Fight Club. I don't know. Sean's kind of a violent guy. We'll have to see what he's up for. But thanks for supporting us. And Mark, before I come home, I have a big date tomorrow. I'm going to be meeting with Brian Grewley, who was on the show earlier this year to talk about the Great Newspaper War, which Joe was a frontline soldier during the newspaper war. But he's written a book called Bitter Frost, which I just finished reading yesterday. Another up north mystery, fantastic book. And I'm going to grab a coffee, maybe actually a beer with Brian tomorrow. So I'm really looking forward to that. That's, the amount of great stories there are in this state and the amount of talented people we have is one of the things that, while everybody tells us that we need to make Michigan great again, feels pretty damn good to me.
Amen to that. And speaking of great Michigan places, the Caju Cafe.
Oh my God.
Let's talk about them.
Yeah, there's always something great going on at the Caju Cafe. As you know, they have Muscle Madness on Monday.
Yep,
all you can eat mussels. They have karaoke every week. They have an open jam session every week. Last Friday of the month, I believe, they always have Super Crunch, which is a Grateful Dead cover band. They pack the house. And by the way, it's not just the house. It's the beer garden. You can go outside for live, fantastic music under the stars. And just behind the beer garden is my favorite place to grab a beer in the summer, the Garage Bar at the Caju Cafe. So to find out how late the kitchen's open, trust me, it's open late. To find out what's on the menu, to find out what's on the musical menu, and to find out what other great things they have, or maybe even book a feather bowling lane.
There you go, yeah.
Go to cajucafe.com, and Mark will have a link to all these places on our website. I mentioned the Artisan Interiors earlier. If you're looking to update your home, maybe you have a kitchen that needs a hole in the ceiling fixed like mine. Maybe you have a space you don't like to use, you don't use now that you could. Like maybe you're a legendary radio broadcast and you think, what am I going to do with this basement? Hey, I'll make a studio. Crazier things have happened. Artisan Interiors can help turn that unused space into primo territory, whether it's your kitchen, finishing your basement, custom cabinetry, new fireplace around, or anything else in your home. Artisan Interiors would love to help. Give them a call at 586-770-3169, or you can give them a text at 586-909-9350, and we will have their information on our website, which is soulofdetroit.com. You can find links and information about all our sponsors. You can also find a link to our store. That's where you can buy our great Soul of Detroit merch. We have V-neck T-shirts there for the women and for the kind of flamboyant men out there who love the show. And we have all kinds of great gear, including Paul's favorite, the green and white Soul of Detroit script shirt, and the Soul of Detroit women's wear, designed by our own Erica Erickson, who we hope will be back with us soon, along with our good friend Sean Windsor. So Mark, I don't know what a week without you would be like. Which I guess is why. Well, I guess it would be restful and relaxing. But who needs that? Who needs that? So thanks for stitching this Frankenstein of a technical beast together, Mark, and we'll be back next week under more conventional circumstances.
All right. Sounds good.
And until then, Cyrus, take us out.
Can you dig that? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?